Okay, friends, today we are going to talk about Zoom and we're going to dive into all the cool features. It's super easy to get started. You just go to zoom.us. There'll also be a link down in the description below, and you just click sign up. It's free, and I think actually if you click on the link below, it's going to take you here where you can get a free plan as well. The free plan is awesome. So Zoom allows you to basically do video calls, video meetings if you don't already know about it. If you do know about it, then you know how powerful it is, and maybe you're just trying to learn a little bit more about it. So let's just click sign up. It's free, either there or there, and it'll take you to the whole sign up thing. Now, once you have installed Zoom, there are plenty of options within the in the profile section, and so I would highly encourage you to go through that and to set it up how you like it. But for ease of use, we're just going to slide on over here to the desktop, and we're going to look at Zoom here. So this is on the desktop on Mac. I'm sure it's very similar on PC, but you can see there are 4 options here: new meeting, join, schedule, and share screen. There's also chat, meetings, and contacts up here, and then there's this little settings button right here. So let's start off in settings. We want to go ahead and we want to make sure we go through everything and we set up Zoom how we like it. So if you have dual monitors, this is where you would check that off to make sure that you're able to use both of your monitors. Zoom has this really cool feature where you can see different types of people or different camera views rather. So you can move one camera view to one screen and have a different camera view on the other screen, which is really cool. So check that off if you want to do that. I like to always have enter full screen when starting or joining a meeting checked. That way it goes to the forefront of my attention and my focus, and I can just be there and be present in the Zoom meeting. Then right here we see automatically copy invite link once the meeting starts. If you're looking to invite more people, like you're the host, if you're hosting a meeting, and we'll talk about joining versus hosting in a second, this could be helpful. I make sure when I'm hosting that everybody has a link, and there's an easy way to get the invite link also. So I don't check this because if I have something copied that's important, I don't want to accidentally lose what I've previously had copied. Always, I would highly suggest checking this, because if you accidentally click leave a meeting when you're in the middle of something, this will ask you if you really want to leave the meeting, and it'll get you to confirm. So if you accidentally click it, this will prevent you from actually leaving. I also like to do meeting durations because I want to make sure that I'm efficient with my time. This may or may not be as important for you. And then this is obviously personal preference, adding it to the Mac OS menu bar. That's just putting it up here, so you can do different things from this top bar here. And then this is again just personal preference, stopping your video and audio when display is off, or when screensaver begins. That's just personal preference. Now for the reminders, I would highly suggest making sure these reminders are what you want them to be. You don't have that many options, but I like to know before a meeting starts, right? And so I like to know, okay, 5 minutes before my meeting starts, I just want to get a quick reminder, and that way I know, okay, let me start prepping for this meeting, or finish prepping for this meeting rather, close out everything I'm doing so I can focus on the meeting. Then the theme here, I'm going to go ahead and switch it to dark because it's easier on the eyes, less blue light. It'll help you sleep better. I'm not a sleep expert, y'all, so just, I prefer to like it better dark, but you can do whatever you want here. Okay, so those are the general settings. Let's hop into video. Now, before we look at video, you may see me on the camera, and it's quarantine, so I may be looking a little bit rough. Honestly, I don't care. I just want to do this video for y'all. So let's hop into the video here, and we can see, oh, it's actually showing. All right, it's not even showing me. All right, so I'll hop on here. So you see we have myself in the background here, but let's keep going on. So you have some interesting things here that you can do. And I'll show you how to put this virtual background there, by the way. But on the video, you can choose which camera you want. So I have a webcam, but you could switch it to your built-in camera. And you're not going to really see much because you see this top bar right up here. That's because my webcam is over that camera, so it looks a little funny. So we'll just put that back to where it was. Then I actually like to do just a widescreen 16:9. You can always switch it to the original ratio. It doesn't matter that much. It's just more personal preference. Then you can enable HD versus non-HD. Of course, HD is pretty much the way you want to go. Mirroring the video, this is like you can see either it'll be one way or the other. And this is really to understand like what your viewers are seeing, because like that whole mirror thing where if you look at it, you're actually not seeing yourself, you're seeing like the mirrored reflection. So that's what's going on here. And then touching up your appearance, this is to get rid of skin blemishes and other nasties on your face and whatnot. So you see here, it's my face is looking a little bit rough, but then when I touch up my appearance, it looks a little bit better. So it's like your own built-in like Instagram filter, if you will. So then when it comes to the meetings, I always like to display the participant name because occasionally I don't do the best of remembering people's names, so I want to make sure that I can read it at all times. That's just my personal preference. If you're doing like some sort of streaming or like a presentation or something, and you just want to keep it purely the visual and not have the name, or if somebody's name is like inappropriate, then turn this off. Then I always like to turn off my video when joining a meeting. I've been doing this a lot lately because given Corona, I've just been doing things looking rough, so I just like to turn it off, and I like to have the choice of whether I turn my video on or off. This doesn't prevent you from doing it, but it gives you the opportunity to not have it start off like that. And then always show the video preview dialog. This isn't really that important. This just lets you see your video before you hop into a meeting. So don't be afraid that if this is on, it'll just turn on when you're going into the meeting. That only happens if this one is unchecked. And then hiding non-video participants. So some people can turn off their video and it'll just show their like little profile icon. And so if you want to not see that, you can just click that, and then only people who have their videos turned on will show up in the actual, what you're looking at. And then spotlight my video when speaking. So when you're in a meeting with a bunch of people, typically, and I believe this is unchecked by default, but typically when other people speak, you see them, but when you speak, they see you, but you don't see you, right? So if I'm speaking in a group of 3, whenever the other 2 speak, I see them, and whenever I speak, they see me, but when I speak, I don't see me. So depending on whether or not you want to see yourself when you talk, that is what this is for. And then display up to 49 participants per screen in gallery view. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. I think this might be capping it at 49, because what happens is, and I'll show you gallery view versus speaker view. We're actually going to fire up a meeting here before the end of this. But it'll show you, it'll have like different like little boxes of a bunch of different people, and I'm not sure if this is saying go up to 49 or cap it at 49. So play around with that and see what happens. So let's go into the audio, and here this is where you choose your speaker and your microphone, and you can see all the different settings here. So it's really good, I would suggest, to test your speaker and to make sure, and to test your mic and make sure everything's working, and you can actually choose it, right? So if you see here, I have a couple different speaker options. All this crisp speaker deal is it's just a virtual it's a little app that I use to filter out non-voice noise. So like if my dog is barking, it'll filter that out. And I'll put a link in the description below for Crisp. It's pretty cool if you're working from home. Anyway, so I set everything to Crisp, and then within Crisp, hopefully you can see this, but within Crisp, I can actually go ahead and switch which mic and which speaker it is. And you can see as I speak, this little bar goes up to indicate that I'm speaking. Now, one thing you do want to make sure of is when you have multiple different things for microphones and speakers and whatnot, like I have headphones and I have this professional microphone setup, and then you have your computer default. Just make sure everything's set up properly, and I'll show you how to change this within a Zoom meeting. But I'd go here and set your defaults, and then just get that working how you want it to. And then you can automatically adjust the volume if you want. I like to, because Zoom is smart, so just let them be the workhorse for a lot of these things that you'd have to manually adjust. And then this separate audio device to play a ringtone simultaneously. I'm not exactly sure what this is. I would assume this means when you have you're doing Zoom on your phone, because you can do it on your phone or your computer or your tablet, I guess. If you want to also be able to take phone calls while you do this. So I'm not sure what this is. I'd recommend playing around with it and going about testing this stuff. But anyways, you want to make sure all this stuff is set up right. I, of course, like to mute my microphone when joining a meeting. Just like the video, I want to have the option, and I want to make sure that I'm choosing when people hear me. And then press and hold space key to temporarily unmute yourself. If you're going to put this on, just make sure you know that you've put this on. Okay? So let's go to share screen. This is just pretty simple. So when somebody else shares a screen, enter full screen. That's just your preference of whether or not you want to see the full screen. And then this is kind of similar to maximizing the Zoom window when a participant shares screen. Now, what I do like to do is I like to scale to fit shared content to Zoom window. So I basically just want Zoom to be smart and to make things nice for me to see, instead of if they're sharing something that's way too big or way too small, I want Zoom to make it me friendly so I can look at it and I don't have to worry about changing it. Now, the side-by-side mode, what happens is here, when somebody has their video on and they're sharing their screen, you can see both of those things. You can see both their video and their screen share. Now, I like to just focus on one thing, so I don't like to have this, but if you do want to have that, so where you can see what the person is looking like and you can see their shared screen, then this is great, and Zoom does a good job of it. And then silent system notifications when sharing desktop. This is huge. Like if you constantly get things dinging or emails or notifications, whatever, it could really be aggravating for the other people. And if you're trying to record something, then that could really mess you up. So I'd highly suggest silencing system notifications. So let's go into chat. One cool thing about Zoom chat is you can, cool thing about Zoom is that you can chat, which is really, really interesting. And they give you some really cool features there. So like you can message the whole group, you can message people individually, and so it gives you a lot of it gives you a lot of flexibility there about how you want to do it. So Zoom chat, and I'm talking about chat within Zoom. There is this chat feature here that I have not actually played around with too much, but reading this a little bit more, it seems like you could probably chat outside of a meeting. Let's actually go explore this. So, oh yeah, super cool. So you can, it appears, you can have a chat with people who are outside of a meeting. So that's pretty cool. I'd suggest going and digging into that, because I'm just finding this out myself. So anyways, we want to just make sure that we're going through here and that we're keeping all of our settings and whatnot how we want them. So let's go to virtual background, and this is what I was talking about before. Now I do play around with this a lot, so I like to have fun with it. For example, I was on a family Zoom call, and there's we all love Saturday Night Live, and so there's that one thing about the song with T-Pain, I'm on a boat, right? So of course I had to put this as my virtual background because that's hilarious, and everybody thought it was funny, including myself. But anyway, so you basically you choose a virtual background. You don't have to have any. You can just have your standard background here. But I like to have a beach because I like the beach. Or, Aurora Borealis or whatever it's called. Anyways, so that's just how you do it. It's pretty simple. In order to do it, you just click here. You can add an image or video. If you have a green screen, then go ahead and click this button, and that'll give you some better quality. But What's really cool is the Zoom app does really well. I mean, you saw I have a TV back there, a wall, different colors, and Zoom's getting it pretty well. I mean, it looks a little weird, like on the side of my face and whatnot because the chair's back there. But you see, if I go there, it gets rid of it. But it does look like I'm kind of in the Matrix. Anyway, so you do that, and it's just it's cool. So I'd play around with that if you want. Then recording. Um, you can choose where to put recordings, and you can actually record your Zoom sessions. And so I like to have these settings because that's just the settings that I like. So I don't want to have to choose location every single time. So I put them all in this one folder on my Mac, and then I know where they all are. So I don't want to have to choose a new location to say the recording every time the meeting ends because I do a lot of Zoom meetings. This record a separate audio file for each participant. If you really wanted to really get into like the audio editing, and maybe if you're doing a podcast or you're doing some sort of talk show or something like that, you might want to do this. But honestly, I just don't want to go to that amount of effort to make it happen like that. So I just leave that unchecked. Again, if you want to optimize for third-party video editor, it basically just changes the format for your video files. You see the tooltip that I'm pulling up for you. So you basically just want to do this if you're going to throw your Zoom recordings into a third-party editor. And then timestamp is just to embed the time and date into the video recording. So video recording files have like properties to them called metadata. And so if you want to add a timestamp, you can into that metadata, you can just check this off. It's not super important. But if you want to have that there, just go ahead and click it. I do like to record video during screen sharing because if you're going to go through the effort of sharing your screen, I want to make sure to capture that if I'm recording. I don't want to have the video next to the shared screen. So remember I was telling you before how you can still see the person who's sharing's video and what they're sharing at the same time. I actually don't want that when I'm recording because I just want to see what they're sharing. And then temporary recording files is more for just troubleshooting, but I've never really had an issue, so whatever. So that's recording. I don't actually want to go into profile right now because I'm not sure. I don't remember off the top of my head what info it's going to show, so I don't want to go through that. But I'd say just going into profile and checking out all the things they have there, so you can customize that how you want it. So let's talk about some cool things here. So the last thing we'll do is click new meeting, and we'll go into a meeting, and then we'll play around with it so you can see what it's like. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to click join meeting. So what you can do is you can actually put in the meeting ID or the link name. And so each Zoom meeting has a meeting ID. So you can see here the meeting ID for this meeting that I have today is 938-2124-0152. So if you click join and you put in that meeting ID, whatever it was, you can just go ahead and join straight into there. Now, most of the time you're going to get a link that whoever is hosting the meeting, they get a link and they're going to share that link with you, and you just click that link and you'll get taken to it. But if they're having issues or you just happen to know the meeting ID and can't get in or whatever, you can just paste the meeting ID into here, type it in here, and click join, and it'll take you right to that meeting. It's awesome. Then when it comes to planning and scheduling, all you have to do is click schedule. And this allows you to actually create your own meeting. So let's say you want to set up a meeting for a sales call with Matt. And you want to say, okay, I want this date to be May 31st, and set up your time, 10 a.m. to 10:30, great, time zone, great. You can do a recurring, so let's talk about recurring meeting after. So meeting ID, you have your own personal meeting ID. So whenever you sign up for Zoom, you get an ID, and that is your personal meeting ID, which means nobody else can use this one to start a meeting. This is yours. Or you can just generate a new meeting ID every single time you want to do a new meeting. So I like to have new meeting IDs generated automatically for me, because I don't want to clog up my personal meeting ID if I need to do an emergency thing with it, which I don't know why you would. You could always just generate a new one, but I like to keep my personal meeting ID nice and clear. So here you see the password. So you can set passwords for new meetings. Now, Zoom, because they've been getting hacked a lot lately, they've gone into my settings and they've required me to do this. So it says here, your account requires that you set a password for your meetings. I can go into the profile settings and the advanced settings and whatnot, and you do that by going to zoom.us and signing in and looking at all the settings. I can choose whether or not this happens, but I don't feel like going in and doing that right now. So you can set a password to where only people with this password can get into your meeting. You can obviously change this password, so your password can be happy or whatever. So then video here, you can choose whether or not you as the host start off with your video on or off, and then participants, the people that join the meeting, start off with their video on or off, and then you can put it in. It'll go straight into your calendar, so you can choose what kind of calendar you have. Let's look at some advanced options. So if you have a waiting room, that means you need to you will have to admit each guest as they join. And so this can be useful if you're getting hacked a lot and you just want to really have control over who enters the meeting. And it's really easy. It just pops up in your meeting. There's a little notification that's like, so-and-so is trying to join. Do you want to admit or reject? And so obviously if you know them, you click admit. And if you don't know them or don't want them in the meeting, you would click reject. So that is what Enable Waiting Rooms for. Join before host allows people to hop on before you, which is useful because you may be running late. What if you're on your way to go into the meeting and you decide you want to go grab a coffee or a cup of water, and then you're a couple minutes late, but everybody else is trying to get on, so they can join before you, which is useful. And then muting participants upon entry, also useful, just to make sure none of the background noise comes in right away. So this one right here, the authenticated users can join. I don't want to do this because I don't want to force them to get Zoom if they don't want to, because anybody can join any Zoom meeting if they have the right Zoom link. They can do it through their browser. They don't have to have this whole Zoom application. So I don't like this at all. This is basically Zoom trying to force people to download Zoom. So I do not check that. And then automatically record meeting on the local computer. I don't like to do this because I want, again, to have control over whether or not I record something. So if you check this off, that means every meeting that you do will automatically be recorded, or at least the recording will start. You can always turn it off, but I don't like that at all because I want to have control. So let's talk about recurring meeting before we move on. Recurring meeting basically means that it takes away the time and it gives you the ability to set a repeat in your calendar. So if you think about your Mac calendar system, you can choose the frequency with which it repeats. So you could do daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, yearly, quarterly, so on and so forth. So if you want to have a recurring meeting, so let's say you want to have a weekly family meeting, okay, which is getting pretty popular now during the virus and the quarantine situation. So you could have a weekly family meeting, and this will just put it on your calendar at whatever time it is now, and you can move that meeting around, and then you can set it to different repeat options. So it'll basically reserve this particular meeting ID and password for all of the recurring meetings. So if you want to do like a weekly fam jam, or you want to do like a weekly call with your team, or a weekly whatever, a weekly webinar or whatever, you would put that into this topic here. Or rather, you'd put that into effect using recurring meeting. So then you just click schedule and it'll put it on your calendar. I'm not going to do that. So that is schedule and join, and then share screen. I don't actually know what this does as of right now, so we'll just see what happens. Oh, okay. So I don't want to figure this out right now, but this looks kind of cool. But let's go in and start a meeting and see what that looks like. So we see here that immediately when you get into this meeting, it will create a password, it'll create an invite link, it'll create a participant ID, it'll show the meeting topic as your name, and the host as your name, and then you can invite people, you can share your screen, you can join the audio, and you have a bunch of cool features here. So down here is where you choose your microphone, and so you can choose your microphone and your speaker. And so now you see that I'm actually choosing some different settings, and you can go into audio settings, which I'll show you in a little bit how you can get to the settings from within the Zoom meeting. But basically, you can just choose your different microphone and speaker. You can test your stuff, and you can leave the audio, which I would not recommend if you're trying to have a productive meeting. And then you see right here, the red line through the microphone shows that I'm muted. So to unmute myself, you just click it, and then you'll be unmuted. And you see the little green thing filling up the microphone. That's just acknowledging the sound. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself. And so that is how you mute and unmute yourself, and then you have your video. Again, I'm looking kind of rough, so I'm not going to turn it back on. But you can choose which camera, choose your virtual background, and you can turn your video on by clicking that, and then you can turn it off by clicking that again. So whenever you get into a meeting, you want to make sure that people have your link if you have not already. So all you do is just copy that link, and you could send that out to people, make sure they have the password, and yeah, it's pretty much that easy. You have some security here, so you can choose to lock the meeting, you can choose to enable the waiting room, you can allow participants to do different things. So if people are spamming the chat, you would just remove their ability to share screen and to chat, because they may be putting things into this chat here which are inappropriate. So let's say a spammer comes in and they're like, inappropriate stuff. Arg. You may be like, all right, person who's typing inappropriate stuff, you can no longer chat. So then you would make sure this is unchecked. And then let's say they're trying to screen share and they're trying to show inappropriate stuff on the screen share. You can prevent them from doing that too through the same thing. Participants just gives you a pretty quick overview of all the people in it. Some really helpful things here are muting and unmuting everybody at the same time. So let's say you're the moderator and you want to have a bunch of people in, but you only want a few people to talk. So you would click mute all, and everybody would be muted. And then you would uncheck allow participants to unmute themselves. So now they cannot unmute themselves. They are forced to mute. And then you can obviously have them muted upon entry if you were doing that. Whenever people enter or exit your meeting, you can have a little chime that lets you know when they're entering and exiting. So this is good for making sure that you're aware of who's in the meeting. I always keep this on. And then I do like to let people rename themselves, but if they're abusing that, you can remove that here, and then you can do the whole waiting room situation. So this is a pretty useful function. And then the chat, we talked about that. Sharing a screen. So what happens when you share your screen is you click share, and it'll ask you what you want to share, right? So if you want to go, and you can do cool things like you can go to the whiteboard, you can do just a portion of your screen or just the computer sound, or you can do a second camera, you can do files, and you can tie in these different cloud-based file things. And so what's really interesting is that you can actually you can choose which screen you share. So let's say the Zoom thing that we were, or the Google Chrome that we were just looking at where we were downloading Zoom, you can share just that window. Now, as you switch tabs within the window, and I'll just show you so it makes sense what I'm saying. So you see here, it says your screen sharing, pause share, annotate, blah, blah, blah. So you can do a lot of cool things here. So let's say I want to annotate. I could draw on it, and people will see what I'm drawing. I'll just draw a little smiley face. But anyway, so let's say you are, let's say you're here, and it says you're screen sharing. You can open up any sort of new tab, and it'll continue to screen share. But then let's say you scroll over here to desktop. It shows your screen sharing is paused. And the reason why this is important is because if you're switching the actual window, it will pause your screen share because it wants you to choose which window you show. But when you go back, it'll resume screen sharing, and you can switch between tabs. So let's say you're doing a video like I'm doing, but you're doing Zoom to record it, which you can. You can solo Zoom and just record there. You just want to make sure that you're recording the things that you want to be recording and that you have control over all that stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and, you can pause the share at any time and resume the share. And if you want to move to a different window, you can just go ahead and do a new share, and you could say, okay, I'm going to go back to the desktop now. Okay, now I'm sharing here. And so you can see this, the green bar or the green frame around the screen right now. That's indicating that it's being shared. You could also do interesting things like bring up a whiteboard. So you can draw on it, you can stamp it, you can spotlight it, erase it, format it, so on and so forth. Pretty intuitive. And then you can always, of course, share your iPhone or iPad via AirPlay or cable. So if you want to do like a tutorial or show something cool on your phone or tablet, you can just plug it in or do AirPlay, and it is really, really interesting how you can do that. That's one of my favorite features here. So we've pretty much talked about all the things that we need to talk about, and now you are almost an expert, but let's just talk a little bit more about some things. So you can always click meeting ID up here to see more information. You can always click here to understand your statistics and whatnot, and see your different encryption and whatnot. And then I want to show you, I know that pulled up the settings, but that's not the only way to do it. You could also go up here into the top bar. You can click zoom.us and then click preferences, and it'll bring up settings. And these are going to be useful if you want to adjust settings within the actual meeting itself. So you can go through and do all those things again. So that is pretty much it. Zoom is a pretty awesome platform. I'd highly suggest playing around with all of your different settings. Make sure everything's how you want it. When you go into the Zoom website, they just have a ridiculous amount of settings. And there's just a ridiculous amount of settings. So when you are going through there, just make sure it's what you want. Now, I do want to talk about a couple important things. You saw on the bottom right when I clicked end meeting, it showed end meeting for all or leave meeting. If you click leave meeting, you'll leave, but it'll keep the meeting up for everybody else in there. If you click end meeting for all, obviously everybody will get kicked out. And if you have recorded things, when you click end meeting, it will take a little bit to load, and then it will give you a recording of your chat and of everything that you shared in both a video and an audio file wherever you set it up. So that's pretty much it. That's Zoom in a nutshell. Yeah, hope you have a good one.